ready? You got me running. Shake it, shake it, shake it.
I am Meredith Hirsch.
And I'm Mike Chavez.
And this is Working Healthcare.
Today we're joined in the studio by Dr. Matthew Mundwiler, a private practice rheumatologist based in Columbus, Ohio. He's in South Florida for the National Infusion Center Association Conference, and lucky for us, he made time to stop by for an in-person conversation. Meredith actually met Matt 2 years ago on a boat at a NICA event hosted by my former company. So this episode brings our overlapping worlds full circle.
I know, and I can't believe that you didn't meet him on that boat. So now we're getting to meet him today. Matt and I both work in the world of independent medicine. And let's be real, that world keeps getting smaller. Not long ago, most physicians owned their own practice. But today, according to the American Medical Association, fewer than half, just 46.7%, are practice owners. At the same time, nearly 80% of U.S. doctors now work for hospitals or corporate entities. That may sound confusing at the first, but here's the deal. A lot of doctors still work in medical practices, but those practices are increasingly owned by large health systems or private equity. So, while it may look like business as usual on the outside, those physicians aren't running the show. They're employees. And that shift is making it harder to recruit new doctors into independent practice. Costs are up, support is down, and the red tape keeps getting thicker. Insurance denials alone have jumped more than 60% in the past year, slowing down care and draining resources. Meanwhile, hospitals often charge 3 to 7 times more than independent clinics for the same physician-administered medications, hurting patients and leaving small practices fighting just to keep up.
In this episode, Matt opens up about what it really takes to stay independent, financially, operationally, and emotionally. He shares how he keeps patients at the center of his decision-making and why clinical autonomy remains one of the most important pieces of delivering quality care.
We also get into the weeds of staffing, reimbursement, documentation, and the constant juggling act of running a small business in a big system. You'll hear how Matt is navigating these hurdles and what changes he believes are essential to protect the future of independent practice.
Whether you're a physician, policymaker, practice leader, or just someone curious about how care gets delivered, this episode offers an honest, unfiltered look at the triumphs and trials of practicing independently in today's healthcare landscape.
Dr. Matthew Mundwiler, welcome to Working Healthcare.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you, Mike.
I am so excited to have you here. And when I told Mike that we were interviewing you, he's like, why do I know that name, but why do I not remember him? And I said, you were the one who hosted the event when I met Matt. So
I was busy hosting.
Yeah, you were busy hosting. So our worlds are all coming back together because you're going to the NICA event down in Miami, and I won't be there because I'll be at the Florida Society of Rheumatology conference because somehow they screw that up.
We will all miss you.
I know, thanks. I don't know. Let me know if anybody actually does miss me. That would be great.
I will.
So I've really known you pretty well for the last couple of years. You've been my buddy at these NICA conferences, but I would love for you to share your story. Why did you even decide to become a doctor? Why did you go into rheumatology? And share a little bit about your path on getting into this private rheumatology practice.
So my decision to become a doctor wasn't one where I was just completely driven only by that goal from when I was young. I'm always a splasher where at any level, it's like, yeah, this feels good, but I'm going to look and see what being a psychologist would be like, or maybe I should do business, or maybe I should be a professor in researching. But what was interesting when I was going through those formative educational years, it just kept pulling me back somehow, whether it be through opportunities given, who I was meeting, how well I was scoring in certain tests or in certain skill sets. It always brought me back. So for instance, when I went to college at Bowling Green State University, and people ask me, well, why did you go there? Well, it was close to home, and so it was comfortable. But one of the main reasons is I was going to try to become a teaching golf professional. And I had a nice scholarship to a school in the South. And they kept calling me and like, we can't wait for you to come. I'm like, why is it? I'm not a great golfer. I'm decent, but not great. I'm not even as good as my daughter is.
I know your daughter
My
is going to
daughter
want a
is
full
very
scholarship.
good. Yeah, she actually shoots real numbers. But they said, you have the best academic credentials of anyone that has ever applied to our school. And that got me thinking, because it's not like they were good, but I didn't think they were that good where I should be like that at a school. So got the wheels turning, and then I had to scramble to get into an actual respected university. So I got a nice opportunity there, and I did get some scholarship money, so I went to Bowling Green.
And then you actually finished in 3 years, and you were able to transition into med school, right? A 7-year program?
I could have done that. So yeah, you had an early in program, or they would call it early admission. I did get accepted through that route. And that was one of the opportunities that kind of came about to like kind of shine the light on your path, where it was how I was doing, who I was meeting, where the talents and the achievement tend to be going were towards this program. And then I did have the option to go to medical school early if I so chose. But depending on how those years went, you had the opportunity for deferment, and I did take that. I worked a lot. So to be in that program, you had to put a lot of hospital hours in. So I was working quite a bit as a clerk on top of a very rigorous and compressed BS program.
Was that BS in like the Bachelor of Science, not the other type?
Yeah.
I'm just teasing.
It depends on who you ask, and you would get both interpretations.
So I have a BS in advertising, so there you go. That's probably the
beautiful.
alternative.
I love that, yeah.
Exactly. So was anybody in your family in healthcare?
Yes, but you have to, as far as close family, I have my mom's sisters, my aunts on their side, all nurses. And then I have a cousin that's a nurse. If you look generation back, I have a great uncle that was neurosurgery at the Cleveland
but
Clinic.
that's just
It's
right? That's not something.
And then
that
my great-grandfather in Toledo, though at the time he said he delivered all the babies on the east side of Toledo. That was he was a family practice physician and was a stalwart of that community. So there are medical professionals, but there's this long lineage of doctors? No, there is not. And then the interesting thing is my grandmother, and we didn't have the closest relationship. There was a lot of distance, but we would visit from time to time. I didn't find out till later. I knew she was a nurse, but she was a nurse at a rheumatology practice in Toledo.
Oh, wow. So it comes full circle.
Yeah, it kind of blows your mind. You're like, yeah, maybe this is destiny. And it is wired in you, even though it didn't seem on the surface to be. It seemed to be more happenstance than it seemed to be wired.
So you go to medical school, and then you do your internal medicine residency.
Yeah.
When is it that you decide you want to go into rheumatology?
So when I entered internal medicine first, I had some other health things arise when I was in medical school. I was on a very surgically focused track, and I was doing well in those clerkships and scoring well and getting along, and kind of my personality, if you will, fit in. Then I had some of my own health issues enter, so it made a surgical career a little bit dicey at best. So I really had to recollect. And when I did, I realized I can be anything from internal medicine. So really with an effort to keep my doors open and not become too narrow, I did land a nice residency spot at Cedars-Sinai. But I was still undecided about where I was going to take this. And then what happens mostly is most people are like cardiology or gastroenterology, because that's where, where if you have that forward thinking, where most internal medicine residents want to go, and especially at the program I was in. Gastroenterology fit well, but I couldn't see myself just talking about that organ system all the time.
Oh, gosh, no.
Right. You got to pick what you love, but you got to know what you got to tolerate. I didn't know if I want to tolerate. And then I went into cardiology. I was thinking about cardiology, but I did not think like cardiologists. They are very cut and dry. They are very driven by the literature, by the numbers. Of course, I'm sure this would be debated if we had a sit down, but the way it was being presented to us, it was like, this you do this you do that, this means this. And I'm like, I do like to have a creative signature on what I do day to day. And so after the first year, I was kind of stuck, and I was not thinking about being a rheumatologist. And rheumatology, when you're taught it in medical school, you're taught about the labs, disease criteria, and mind you, a biologic was one line in one pharmacology lecture. And it intrigued me. I was like, well, what the heck is that? Because it was it was on a different path with a whole different thought than everything else that was being used. And I still remember that lecture. And I didn't go to all the lectures, I will tell you. But I remember that lecture, and I remember that line,
All
and
the
I remember
smart
that
people
slide.
never go to all of the lectures.
Right, yeah.
I was at every lecture.
Got to use your time. My class ranking shot up when I went to less lectures. So, but then in July of my second year, when I was like, am I going to go to law school? I was in LA. I was like, should I start going to auditions? Where do I take myself from here, knowing that this isn't quite fitting? I had my first rheumatology rotation, and I went into it like, kind of relaxed and like whatever happens, happens. And so there was one part of that rotation. You go to a clinic at Harbor UCLA, and it's basically a famous arthritis clinic, and it's staffed by the UCLA professors. And it was amazing. And me finding it amazing meant a lot because no one else thought it was amazing. Because here you are at a county hospital, a very county LA hospital,
Right.
with stacks, and that we were not on EHR, so there were stacks of charts to the ceiling. I did not mind being there till late at night, not speaking my native language, taking care of those people like a rheumatologist does. It just clicked. I clicked with the people that were the mentors. I clicked with the specialty. And there was no question in my mind. I told my wife at the time, I said, I am going to be a rheumatologist at the end of that July. And it was very empowering, and here we are.
And you didn't start out at a full rheumatology clinic. You actually, first job out of school was in an orthopedic group, and you were their sole rheumatologist. Why did you choose that route?
So I will correct that if you don't mind.
You may correct me.
Thank you. So I was with a solo rheumatologist. I joined them.
Okay.
And I will just say he taught me a lot, but it wasn't working out.
That must have been a very short stint.
It was 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I need to give myself a little credit there for not knowing about it.
That's okay. I don't feature that in most discussion. And then while I was at a conference for ultrasound, I met some rheumatologists that practice a rheumatologist that practiced about 40 miles west of where I was in Chicago. And we started talking, and I started talking about what I'm interested in, goals. We were at a rheumatology conference. And he says, well, I work for this orthopedic group, and then we are looking to add another rheumatologist. Okay. And it was a great conversation. And at the time, I did my research in MRI when I was in my fellowship. That was a lot of it. But then when I kept doing the MRI literature searches, I kept coming across the opportunities ultrasound came. So I really was focusing on that for procedures, really focusing on that potentially as diagnostics. So I would go to these conferences. And then, of course, organically, I met someone that had similar interest in a similar area. And I was there interviewing within 2 weeks.
What are the similarities between orthopedics and rheumatology? Because I say this all of the time. You say this all of the time. You and my husband practice very similarly. Yeah. You're an ultrasound guru, as is he. And when we talk about the fact that you do a lot of non-surgical orthopedics, people are like, what? You're a rheumatologist. So how do the two really relate and intertwine?
I could answer this from so many perspectives. This is not a 4-hour podcast, so I'll try to answer this efficiently. And then you got to ask, well, why would orthopedists want to hire rheumatologists to be part of their group? Right. So that kind of clues you in immediately to kind of why that could be advantageous. So basically, all of their diseases, the way our immune system attacks our own tissues, it can attack any organ. The musculoskeletal system is particularly susceptible because of the kind of tissues that make it up. It makes up all the major tissues that are susceptible to this process. And it's often presenting. When I explain what rheumatologists do, and I have to be very 1 or 2 line about it, I say we are experts in musculoskeletal symptomatology and how it reflects to diseases as a larger
And everybody
entity.
Understands that.
Yeah, right. That's the best I can do in 1 line. And I may have to use different words and synonyms, but basically I say when we see arthritic or musculoskeletal patterns, we are going to make a deeper seated diagnosis. Like we can say, like, my knee hurts, and like your husband was demonstrating today when I was following out, you could say, my knee hurts. Well, the way it hurts, you can say, well, it's your Crohn's disease is active, because you can see that it's through the entheses, and you can see it's patellar tendon dominated. And then we're going to look at your hip, and you see how the hip has synovial thickness, all this. And I was right there with them. This is exactly how I would have taken care of a patient.
Remember, this is a podcast about the business of medicine.
But you're asking these questions,
I am.
how it all pertains. So you
That
went
was
there.
tough for me. My head was starting to hurt.
So and we got to broaden the audience. So this kind of talk will draw them in, and then
really?
we
Draw
can
them in.
then we can go
There are
for the
some
business part.
rheumatologists that listen for sure, though.
Yeah.
So, but based on these, what seem to be independent or unrelated clues, you get to a larger disease. So when I saw that patient with Mark this morning, I knew that there was going to be something more to it. The lady walks in with knee pain. It was presented to him as OA of the knee, and she's probably going to be in a biologic within 2 months.
Yeah.
That's what why rheumatologists work together. On the other side of it, working with the orthopedist, because our disease, even when best controlled, there's going to be susceptible joints, there's going to be quicker degeneration of joints or other musculoskeletal structures. We need and refer to orthopedists more than basically any other subspecialty within internal medicine. So because that comes together, then the orthopedist and the rheumatologist work together. On the other hand, when you have, again, you're presented with a dysfunctional joint or a dysfunctional musculoskeletal function, you have to know, is this orthopedic, which means it's not part of a bigger picture. This is operating independently. And of course, for efficiency, you should be able to take care of the non-surgical components, doing joint injections, understanding how therapy works, using DME. So you have to, from these single clues, make a decision. Is this more orthopedic, or is this part of a bigger problem and actually inflammatory or immune mediated, and then take that route?
And I find that rheumatologists are the better diagnostician to figure that out. You're right. We also refer to an exorbitant number of orthopedic surgeons because there are, obviously, if you need surgery, you need to go to an orthopedic surgeon. But if you need something non-surgical and it's orthopedic related, rheumatologists are very skilled, many, not all, are very, especially those who utilize ultrasound or fluoroscopy, are very skilled at doing non-surgical orthopedics. So you left that practice after about, I think, 5 or 6 years.
It was after about 5 years.
So talk to me about what the independent practice is that you are now a part of and what your role is in that group.
So we're an independent rheumatology practice. We're very large. And my first role in the
You're very large in the world of rheumatology.
Yes, yeah. So that's a good correction, definitely. Yeah, rheumatology wise, we are probably in just normalcy, kind of on the medium.
What do you
side.
have? You have 10 rheumatologists?
10 rheumatologists, 9 APPs. So there's 19 providers right now within the group.
Which is large in the world of rheumatology.
Absolutely. There's only a few groups that are bigger, I think, in the country.
Yeah.
So it's funny how when you say the role, it evolves. So I was making the decision at the time whether to go out on my own and start something or, and again, be a part of something. And as a rheumatologist, some of the advantages on the independent or practice, in the private practice side, there is an advantage to being part of something because it improves the way you use resources, buying power, how you see the patients, collaboration, all those things are advantageous to be in a group. So I did decide to go that route because it was a place I wanted to live. It offered good opportunity, and so I went there. My first role there was to bring ultrasound to the practice. So right away, I was busy injecting the hips, injecting the SI joints, doing some diagnostics. So that was my first role, was to be on a partnership track and bring that into the practice.
Why did you leave the orthopedic group? And I ask that because a lot of people are conflicted right now. They are not necessarily happy where they're at, doctors or those who are non-doctors listening. And we had Krista Idle on the podcast, and she talked about making a mid-career shift. And so for a doctor, you've now spent 5 years growing your practice, and I would say you were full, right? You were busy.
I was beyond full.
Right. So why make that shift?
Yeah, I was asked that question by a lot of people. And one thing is I was in an orthopedic group as a rheumatologist. So I like to be vertically integrated in the operations through a practice. I feel that when a physician who has that interest and is motivated by that can provide the ultimate care at the private practice level to their patient. When you know when everything from your radiology department, your lab department, your billing department, your nursing staff, when you can have a presence and be on a board through all those processes, have a say in how those things are going, it becomes very empowering for the patient. Because then you are not only part of the end product, you're part of the whole product line. That is your reflection, that's your influence. It started to have that momentum at the orthopedic group, but then when it started to grow, it really grew with the orthopedic interest in mind. So everything was based on producing their services, expanding their services, and we were kind of getting square peg and round hole. And then they were kind of, I would say, reducing our input at these levels.
And I think that happened with us as well, because we had a sports medicine physician join our practice, and it was a struggle. He was with us for about 5 years as well, and we made the joint decision to part, and we did that because you had a bunch of rheumatologists around you and you did sports medicine. Yeah. And I just don't think anybody was really happy, and he actually listens to my podcast, so hi. He will know that we're speaking about it, but I really liked him. He really liked our group. It just wasn't a great fit.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I will always be indebted to them for teaching what they taught me. So they were able to expand my orthopedic knowledge, my procedural knowledge. The other two rheumatologists I work with principally, Rich and Dave, I'll love them forever. So the opportunity was great. The opportunity came at the right time. But as I saw how I wanted my own career to go, where my interests were growing, it kind of came to a stagnation point.
So you were employed.
I was, in the end, it was, they actually renamed us to be employed physicians at the end of my stint. So I'm like, that's not how I see that's not how I see the rest of my career playing out. And so then I was looking for a different opportunity.
So what number were you at this practice in which you are part of now? What rheumatologists, there are 10 of you now. What number were you coming in?
So there has been some retirement. So even though I told you there were 10, I would have been number 7 at the time.
Okay, and so where are you right now in hierarchy?
In the pecking order, so I would be number 5. I'm 3rd in age, 5 in seniority, and when I joined the practice.
Okay.
So Meredith and I have gone back and forth about this on the podcast. Is there a partnership track in place, and how does that model work? How did you land on that approach?
So basically you start in a partnership track, and it's intended to be 2 years. So that is their goal, is to integrate you as a business partner and a collaborative partner in the practice immediately.
What does partnership mean?
So partnership means that not only are you a functioning physician within the practice, you start to have ownership in the practice, you have ownership in the assets, and then that increases your influence on the practice operations.
So this is where I struggle. And you work very hard, and we've talked about this offline, about how many patients you see and your productivity, and I know that it is not in alignment with other rheumatologists out there, not even your practice, anywhere, right? You and Mark are definitely outliers in productivity, and I will say that. So how do you decide when you're looking at, is it an eat what you kill model, or are you sharing overhead equally? How does it work out where you feel like it's fair?
You have to first, you got to see the bigger view when it comes to this, because there's always stuff to nitpick. And I would say if you have good communication and you're working with reasonable people, which we tend to be, you may not get your way in every way. But if you see that the end product is really working out, you kind of have to lose some of the nuances that you don't agree with. So even within my own group, there are some nuances where I'm like, this could be a little bit different. But really the end product I find very fair as far as how we incorporate all this. So because of the group is very well run, so our overhead is well controlled, and it is based on a percentage of what you're bringing in. And then there are things that are production based, like there's there's things that you can't attribute to you, like that are under Stark law. We distribute that based on number of patients seen through the year. So there you are recognized for the number of patients you see and your productivity, and it is eat what you kill. And you can choose to work as much as you want or really as little as you want once you become partner.
So it's only 2 years to partnership.
Yeah.
Have you, and I know that you oversee the infusion side of the practice. Are there people who have put in their 2 years, don't work 5 days a week, 4 days a week, maybe 3 days? I don't know your partners, so I'm really asking this blindly, and aren't contributing to the decision making and riding on others' coattails. And the reason I ask this it is something that I think about. I'm very into being just and being fair, but it's also something that other doctors have asked me because they're trying to figure out a model for their practice.
That was my question. Are there thresholds for numbers that they have to hit?
We don't look at it with that much scrutiny because part of the culture of our practice is, and why we may help people be happy is we don't force the numbers directly. We don't have strong or definitive thresholds. And because it eats what you eat what you kill, as the saying may be, it kind of is all built in. If you don't kill as much, you don't eat as much. But on the other hand, and like for instance, we talk about the 2-year partnership track. A lot of people just breeze right through it, and they build enough production to start buying into the building and start purchasing their share and purchasing the assets.
So you
and
do need to buy in. It's
Absolutely.
not something gifted to you.
No, it is not.
Okay.
And for instance, our real estate process is a 5-year process. So so even though you are a partner at that time, for the next 5 years, you are paying into your share of the real estate, and it's based on present market valuation. So it keeps going up and keeps going up.
And you're buying or are you leasing your second building?
We are leasing our second building.
Okay, so when you decide to lease your second building, are you a little fearful of what is happening in healthcare right now with the decreased reimbursement? What gives you the confidence to say, hey, we can add more expenses to our practice?
The only thing I can say, because that is always going to be a concern. You never know when the flick of a pen or the redefining of rheumatology or new technology is going to enter and change everything about how this is going to work. You just
we've
don't know.
seen this historically happen.
Yeah. However, we got 20 years of a good foundation that led to this moment. It shows no signs of slowing down. The projections are friendly unless there's an unforeseen paradigm shift in our specialty and in medicine. I'll segue and say we do have a non-disclosure agreement with this certain business deal, and it is just getting completed. So I'll say everything looks very favorable, and there is backup plans for it. So there is both, and so for instance, we own the building we are in now. Mm-hmm. We will be leasing an area and this new space, and there's both advantages to both. There's advantages to leasing and advantages to owning something. And so we'll see how the best of both worlds are, and I think that will contribute to the next stage of growth in our group if we can have it. And I think we will have it because really our inspiration to get this second location was to decompress really where we are. We have way too many providers in that building. It's a good problem. So just getting a few providers into another location, we don't even have to produce more. That will still be a good move. We will use our current building more efficiently. We'll be able to pull in some of our non-clinical staff under our roof rather than have them at home or at other places we do lease or rent.
So you actually still have people working remotely.
We actually do, we have some great people working remotely.
And you want them to come back into the office?
There will be certain staff that we have that really won't. It's not a viable option because of where they live in the state or what the agreement was.
I would even think if one person or a few people get used to working remotely, to draw them back in is going to be really tough.
Yeah, I don't think some of our key remote employees are going to be drawn back in. But we've talked about certain people that do shift back and forth, or their office is decentralized, but it would be advantageous for them to be, closer quarters to the clinicians. So those are the moves that are going to take place.
So at the intro, we talked about the shrinking number of physician-owned practices.
Yeah.
From where you sit, what do you think that shift is happening? Why do you think that shift is happening?
I think it's increased complexity. It's the increased presence of these large entities that make that really difficult.
Complexity with regard to reimbursement, administrative, all of it?
It's it's definitely all of the above. When you picture and mind you, of course, I only know through what I read. I would imagine my great grandfather that he could literally in Toledo hang up a shingle. There wasn't a lot of regulation. He had his degree. He didn't have to specialize in anything. And as long as he delivered a few babies during medical school, he was delivering babies. Well, we bow both. The standards are way higher than that. And when I was in fellowship and looking to I was always kind of motivated to be, private and to be independent and to have some ownership. And when you see just the beginning, you're like, oh my God, it's like, and you think you have to know everything. I think that's what it comes down to. We're so used to being independent thinkers through that phase of our education. We don't know there's consultants that exist. We don't know Mike's. We do not know Meredith's. We only know what we have been studying for the last 10 years. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, we have to think differently. And we're used to being independent. We're not used to reaching out for help. We're not used to working with consultants. We don't know the value of anything. So we don't know the value of hiring a person or what's like staff, or putting a value on what a private practice could be, projecting it, seeing that. We have none of that kind of knowledge in education.
And it's fluid, right? It's always changing. And we've been talking about this a lot on the podcast, and I'm an optimist, but the trend is clear. Reimbursements are going down. Expenses are going up. It's not getting easier. It's getting more difficult, especially for private practices. So that's the reason that we kind of bring up these things. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
So, of course, you're always feeling the pinch, but for some reason, and mind you, I'm not in the weeds of the numbers like you guys are, it always seems to work out okay. So as long as you're taking good care of your patients, you're time efficient, you're busy, you are running your ancillaries well, it all just kind of works out in the end. And you have to know the good people, you have to know the consultants, you have to have a little faith. There is a faith moment in this process. You gotta have a little faith in yourself, you gotta have faith in the people you work with, and you gotta have faith in the process. So Matt, that does fill in some of the gaps, I'm not gonna lie.
But Matt, you share that you had a well-run practice.
Yeah.
I think people listening might say, oh, that sounds fine and dandy, Matt, but you're one of the large rheumatology groups. It's not quite the same for us. Or you're in a large area and you don't have a lot of competition, it might be different for others listening. What do you think is misunderstood about private practice from those fellows or residents? I'm not talking just about rheumatology, but fellows and residents finishing up and looking at new opportunities.
I would tell them, if they do have a genuine interest in being independent, I had this advantage in my fellowship. There were 30 independent rheumatologists on staff at Cedars-Sinai, ones that weren't really part of their umbrella. It's a very unique situation. So I would get the information that was fed to me during my training, and it made private practice look very bleak. But I was getting that information from non-private practice physicians. I was getting it from those who chose academic tracks, professors, those who were working on and their careers worked for them. But I could tell I was not them. So in my and part of the reason I stayed at Cedars for the fellowship was I saw that this is a unique opportunity to get this insight and work with private practice rheumatologists that you're not really going to get anywhere else. So then, as much as they were willing to divulge, you start going to their offices. And you have to look for, it's like playing a poker game. You got to look for the indirect clues, the things they're not telling you, to see how this works. What does their schedule look like? Who do they have there that's helping them? Oh, they have a practice manager. They have multiple nurses. Well, they've been in practice for 10 years. Look around the corner, I see the infusion center. I see the x-ray machine. And even though everyone talks about the squeeze of reimbursement, how you have to, do more with less, it all still seems to be working out. So again, when you see the indirect clues, you know it's possible. And you know you can generate what you need to make this all happen. And you can see how they continue on their track, even though there's a stress component. It's like I said at the beginning of the interview, it's not just what is good about what you do. You got to figure out, do I handle the stress of certain situations well? And if I had to choose the stress between being in an academic environment and being in a private practice environment, I would choose the stress of a private practice environment every time, because that's just what suits me and my vision for how I want to take care of patients.
Interesting.
And when you were number 7 in that rheumatology group and now number 5 of the 10, you've seen it scale over time.
Absolutely.
What has been the biggest struggle or challenge, I would say, in scaling the rheumatology practice?
What's been interesting, and it kind of happened organically. I will say it interesting. It had to do with finding willing rheumatologists to be in this environment.
Yes, the
Because
physician shortage.
because so I'll start where we talk about student loans, and when I was seeing the different parts of that and knowing what my education cost, I didn't feel that was a huge pressure. It was there, but when you saw if you were doing what you're supposed to be doing and how it could work out, you're like, yeah, it's there, but it's not a killer. Well, then now I'm talking to like physician couples that go and they're not even, they haven't seen a patient yet, and they're $1 million in debt. That is a completely different environment. So when they're getting offered payouts and when they're getting offered a platform with which to practice, that seems a lot more attractive, a lot more critical, essential than what kind of situation I was in. So you can see that part. And what was interesting about my particular situation, they hadn't hired a rheumatologist at the Columbus Arthritis Center for 5 years before they hired me, and they didn't hire another one 5 years later. So for 10 years, I was a single hire. That was an advantage for me because I was able to build my practice very quickly. But the disadvantage is I had to build my practice very quickly.
Right.
And then what's funny is about after the fight, we saw a momentum again of interest in private practice, understanding that there was an advantage to it. And we were getting very eager candidates again. And we did offer some unique opportunities in our marketplace, already being large, but still seeking those that could get partnership and ownership. Because as you said, the supply of those opportunities is dwindling. You know, the ones that come kind of ready-made, you know, you really have to make them more yourself. So us being in this unique position, we started to recruit very rapidly. So within that same period, we recruited 4 rheumatologists versus before it was just like me for a 10-year period. And we were trying to recruit and couldn't because of some of these pressures that were turning the marketplace.
And in addition to just recruiting rheumatologists, what about those on the business side? How have you adapted to the growth of your practice and the knowledge base needed by hiring different people on the business side of your practice?
So when I first was hired by the Columbus Arthritis Center, there was one, and she was a trained nurse. Her name was Melissa. And she was our practice manager, our nursing manager. I think she did infusion negotiation. She did the contract negotiation. And she might have burned out. Sorry, Melissa.
She was your business suite.
She was amazing, but boy, did she wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
And we did have an accountant at the time too, but it was just like it was a very lean crew. And now we have, and I'm going to leave people out because it's much bigger, because now we have general management, human resources, nursing management, nursing team lead, non-clinical team lead, and other positions, expanding accounting. Now we have 2 accountants instead of just 1 accountant. So over a short period of time, if I've been there 11 years, we went from 2 to 3 major players at that level to now multiple, up to a dozen.
And you have 9 owners, 10 rheumatologists, 9 mid-levels. How many total employees under that one roof until you're, and I would say including obviously all of those remote employees?
I'm going to give you the wrong number because I don't know what it is right now because it changes weekly. But it is, last time we counted, between 107 and 109 employees. Wow. So under our whole, and that's including the providers, it's 107 to 109.
And I think that that's important for people listening to this podcast to know about independent practice.
Right.
You are a small business. You are
Absolutely.
a small entity, but it's actually a large business, especially in the world of rheumatology and oncology, because you have all of these very expensive medications.
Yeah.
What percentage of your overhead is medication cost? I openly share this. I mean, mine is about 55%.
I did not come prepared with that number. I would say it's much higher.
You think it's higher?
I do think
a percentage
it's higher.
of your collections, it's higher than that?
Yeah, I would. So let me. I have to think about this one too.
It's
Wow.
so different because,
question.
well, we talked the other night. That's why I say this, Mike, and you know, because you're in people's books all the time. But especially in rheumatology, and I would say oncology is similar, people will say, oh my God, your overhead is 80%. I'm like, well, do you know the cost of our medications?
Right.
Yeah. I would, if you add the medication cost to it, so we have 16 chairs that are running constantly. And so we have a very robust infusion center. And with that and the medications running through it, I maybe misquoted you would, but I would say like if you look at just the budget, it's going to be like 80%.
Oh, wow.
The medications.
I don't know, but you don't handle the business side. You're not the accountant.
I do not.
So I'll talk on my side.
I appreciate.
We'll go with my number.
So,
see, you do need help out there. If you go into private practice, you're not going to know everything. You're going to need help, and it's okay to need help. You can only do so much.
we've been hearing more and more about burnout. How does the autonomy of owning your own practice or being in your own private practice mitigate that or add to it?
So I am at a crossroads with that because I'm working about as hard as I ever could. Because my practice has grown, I've been fortunate to have a growing practice. It's been fantastic. The community has treated me well. All the physicians I've worked with have treated me well. But you can only do so much. And I'm even by using the APPs, learning to delegate, becoming more efficient with everybody, you're still at your wit's end. So one thing that helps mitigate the burnout is you have a passion for it. So you're still doing what you love to do. You still love seeing patients. You still love being part of all this. Even though it takes up an inordinate amount of time, I do love having the title infusion director and be able to work with the staff, our wonderful staff that runs our infusion center on always tweaking and fine-tuning the clinical side, our processes. I love being the lab director. To be able to wear these different hats was a dream of mine. Not just to be like one dimension, you have multiple dimensions. So even though it is very tough, even though it takes a lot of time, the passion does overcome the potential for burnout. That being said, you do have to pay attention to that. And people said, Matt, you have a lot of energy. Well, my energy as I head into my late 40s, early 50s, there's kind of more of a premium on it. So I'm starting to have to pay attention to the schedule, starting to be like, I won't sleep on Thursday. I'll be fine to sleep Friday. And I could do that. My friends saw I could do that. They were like, how do you do this? Well, I'm not doing it anymore. But still, the passion does override the burnout. But you do have to pay attention to it. You do have to understand there's limits of what you can do. And you have to understand that it's okay to start looking to do a little bit less on the energy side so you can maintain that passion, maintain that motivation. It's funny, you asked that question when I'm right at the crossroads where I'm like, ChatGPT, please help me, work less hours per week so I can maintain my current momentum. And you laugh, but here we are, right? So it's like, and what resources do I have at my disposal? And no, it's a real concern. I haven't flipped to where it's like, but man, you do have to pay attention, and you do have to start being more realistic about what you can do. And what's funny, because up until this moment, and when you talk about the fear of a starting rheumatologist, like, I have to grow. I got to be this good. You see the guys that have been in the group 10, 15 years. You see how many patients per scene. It's like, how do I even get there? Well, that was always my fear and my motivation. It's like, now I'm like, boy, I am at the peak. Now what do I do? And you're like, I don't know how to do less. I've never had to think about doing less in a week's time. And I would say it's more of a challenge than having to build a practice. The challenge is, okay, now I'm at peak capacity for what I can just physically and mentally do in a week. I now have to start tweaking and fine-tuning that. That's a big challenge because you're a resource. You have only so much time and energy. And
you have a very large number of patients in your panel, and you're the lab director, and you're the infusion director, and we're getting a ton of insurance denials left and right, and they have increased exponentially year over year. How is that stress affecting you?
So it is a stressor, and there has been a lot more of it, and it is a time drain. I do have wonderful staff that works for me, and we're collaborating to help with that. So even with the major pharmacies, for instance, we'll talk about medication denials. So we work with both CVS and Optum on that directly. So before we had it all in-house, and it was a struggle to have it in-house. Those staff were definitely overburdened. It was hard on them. They were burning out. So then when we had this partnership and expanded that department, things worked a lot seamlessly. Again, it's about knowing the tools at your disposal. And it's funny, a lot of it's about attitude. When I was younger and didn't know that this is how it was, when I would receive denials, it was like personal rejection. It was like, they don't want to go on a date with me. They don't think my opinion's of any value. And then you get to a point where it's just going to happen. I already know it's going to happen. Right. I know when I'm going to request this med or this imaging study. I'm already in my mind preparing the peer-to-peer or the letter or whatever it is. So you're that much farther ahead. And so when it comes, you're just like, here's the letter I already had. Here's a letter I've had to write 10 times. And now we have more tools than ever to generate those things. And so, again, you have to have faith at some moment that's going to be mitigated. The insurances cannot just deny you forever. They have to approve services. They have to prove things.
I don't know. They don't really
have
have to, Matt.
They are held to a certain standard. They have to pay out to pay themselves. They have to keep. They only have. I get a 3% slice of their pie. So when you know these things, you know that there's that moment where they have to honor the system. I'm not saying every step in it's right. But I would say more things work out than not, has been my experience. But you got to put the work in.
What I have learned, yes, you have to fight for it and you have to be willing to fight for the right thing. But I know when the Affordable Care Act came out and insurances were required to spend at least 80% of the premium on healthcare for their participants. And if they didn't, they had to pay a penalty. You know how low the penalty was? So with Blue Cross Blue Shield or United Healthcare paid 60% of their premiums out, said, oh, shareholders, we're going to give you a ton of money. There was a 20% gap. They only had to pay 10% of that 20% gap. I don't know if you knew that.
I don't.
But that is why insurance companies are better off for their shareholders denying insurance claims, because they would rather pay 10% of the 100% than give the 100% away. So no, they're increasingly denying claims. And I really wanted your perspective on how do you as a doctor fight those claims. But you're learning all about the business side by being the director of the lab, the director of the infusion suite. How did you even learn the business side of medicine?
It was just having that interest and motivation to do it along the way. It wasn't like I separated myself from clinical medicine and then say, okay, for the next 2 years, I'm going to ramp up. It was basically whenever any challenge needed to be met, I met that challenge by learning about that challenge and then doing what was necessary to solve those problems. So it was really a brick by brick type of journey. It was not, okay, I see myself as this different entity and then made a very separate move. It was, so when I would see patients and denials would come in, or they couldn't get their medications, or we didn't have something that was in our armamentarium under our roof, do we integrate this into our care, or how do I get that? So it was step by step, bit by bit, to learn more of that business side. But you can tell in this interview, I do know I'm learning about the business side constantly, but do I have consummate knowledge? No.
That's why you have me on speed dial.
Exactly. And that's why we have, instead of 3 administrators 11 years ago, now we have, we're well over, we're in the 10 to 12 range. And yeah, but it takes a team effort. And I think that's what so you can tell my glass is always half full. And I think it has to be an effective physician. If your glass starts to get half empty, you're not going to put in the effort for your patients. You're not going to look at these things like, I can do this. You're not going to start meeting demand. You have to keep the glass half full.
Love that.
And that's what motivates you to find the right people, find the solutions, keep working on new solutions, keeping yourself updated. And that is, I would say that's the challenge. But if you do those things and and maintain that rigor, again, it's tending to work out okay.
How do you keep the humility, though, as a doctor? Because I find that is a struggle a lot of physicians have, is the humility to at some point say, I don't know, and I have to go seek additional help.
Yeah, and that's a great psychological point, because when we're young physicians, of course, every day we're in situations we don't know what we're doing, but we have to act like we're doing. So the people we're in the room with can sense confidence. They let us do a procedure for the first time. We're used to throwing up that wall and saying, yes, I can do it. But it's also we don't realize it's something we've been studying and really focused on for years and years, even when we're at that point of still being at a novice. And then we're shifted into a whole new thinking. So if I could send a message to the young doctors is, you're not alone. There's a lot of resources to draw off of. You can only learn so much in such a period of time. And do pick your area of expertise, but go to experts that are in other areas of expertise. They will open your eyes, they will help you, and you do not have to be an expert in what they are. You do have lawyers, you do have accountants, you do have administrators, you do have insurance specialists, you have people that can help you build a practice, you do have consultants, and it is okay. They are worth the money, They are worth the time, and they will teach you a lot like you've been learning from your professors, from your mentors, from rounds. It's just a different area. And if you have genuine interest in treating your patients vertically through these mediums, then it will follow. You will be interested, or you will find this is not for you, and that is fine too. I would function better in a larger institution, and you can have a lot of value in these health systems. So I think it happens organically like that, depending on what your motivations are.
So here's a question. If you had unlimited time and resources,
Which you have so much of, right?
Yeah, right. I will not know the answer to this in any...
Unlimited time and resources, what's one innovation that you would bring into your practice tomorrow?
Oh, God. That's... So I would want to expand my knowledge of ultrasound so I could get the best machines and being completely diagnostically adequate and competent on that end. That was a goal of mine, and I never got there because there was other things pulling in my direction. I would, if I had unlimited time, not only what I would do too is, and I've been thinking about like kind of what systems, how would I be more like you in a career rather than what I have built in a career? And knowing what my challenges were, knowing kind of what keeping the class half full did, I would want, if I had unlimited time, I could still see my patients do what I was good at. I would start building systems for young doctors. Like, this is our firm. We can help you be an independent practice owner. We can invest in you, but you have to show the interest. These are the benchmarks you have to meet, but still with the mindset of autonomy. Like when we were talking with, like right now, the popular thing is private equity and practice are getting bought. You seem to lose that autonomy. If I had unlimited times and resources, I would rethink that system. Instead of targeting those that have made something like a private equity would, the business has value, it has something to purchase, it is very objective, is having a network that would help bolster and seeing the light for physicians, young physicians that really have this kind of the same motivations and see value in this and how they want to practice. I think it is definitely possible. And I kind of self-training to see if I could make that part of my career. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if I can do it. But just even looking at, again, keeps your class half full, gets the wheels turning, and just gets you talking to the right people. Even if you don't do it yourself, just throwing that out there as an idea may just get it done.
Sure.
And
What role do you think independent medicine plays in the future of healthcare? Or do you think we're headed for extinction, or do you think we still exist down the road?
I think so. It's funny when we're all in this niche where of course you find the social media or the podcasts or the videos. There is definitely a mixed vision of this future. Of course, I'm in Columbus and I see these big buildings. All the major health systems are erecting these huge buildings because Columbus is growing out and there's unlimited real estate to grow out. I see a new building with either Mount Carmel or Ohio Health or Ohio State like every day. I'm exaggerating, but it does seem like that when you're driving around. But then again, we're getting a second location. Here we are in our same boat. We are getting a second location. We are expanding in a building as well. And what they see happening is there's basically a depersonalization that has reached a threshold with these larger entities. There are so many people over the doctor's heads nitpicking these little goals and little benchmarks that you often don't have. If you're going to provide good care, you can use them as guidelines, but for them to be concrete goals all the time, you're not going to provide the best care possible if that's what's always hanging over your head. You're going to ultimately be distracted by that. So there is growing discouragement with that system. And as these systems grow, there is more of that. And they think those that have more of a positive vision for private practice in the future see it's going to break. And then there will be, and as long as that's why I would be motivated to provide those opportunities. Because it's like, look, if you feel like you're basically not valued, you're in this huge machine, you're getting picked on, there is a way to treat patients how you want to be treated, still be productive and lucrative and still have a great career. But you'll have to like certain pressures of this new environment. But if you didn't like that environment, you might find that you embrace the pressures of this new environment and see its value.
And will it be insurance paid or will it be private pay?
That's a great question because it remains, but because the patients are now seeing that they're getting depersonalized care. A larger and larger group of patients are willing to pay cash for these services from good doctors. And when I treat patients, the joke is I am the cheapest thing on the menu. So like if I have a patient that loses insurance, but I know the resources to get what they need, they're like, are you going to be my doctor? I go, I am the cheapest thing on the menu. This is what I cost if you are uninsured. And they're like, that's it kind of thing. Like, you know, like you do all that for that? And I'm like, yes, we do. You know, and they're like kind of like, and it gets their heads scratching. And I think
unless they need a biologic.
Yeah. But then there are, again, if you keep your glass half full, you know the resources, even those people in dire straits, you can help them. I've always kind of tried to find ways. I have wonderful staff that helps me do it. And then you're always knowing that that's in the background. So you're always asking either the reps or the entities or helping to tap into those resources that can still help you get that care for those patients.
So as a huge cheerleader for independent medicine, Dr. Matthew Mundwiler, if you could create one change within our American healthcare system, what would it be?
So, no, I've listened to your podcast before, so I kind of prepared, and luckily it kind of rides on everything we've talked about. I would like to see more of an attitude and vision of convergence from all these entities rather than divergent interests. So, and this can happen everywhere from the hospital level to the insurance level to the physician level to the patient level. I think if we keep care patient-centered, and I know that's cliche, but to say it and do it is a very different thing. Saying it means I want this patient's outcome to be the most important thing possible. And an insurance company can still profit, a hospital center can still do well if we keep that patient-centered attitude in the front of our view. There is no excuse for that. Like one thing that drives me crazy is I know that the interest entities, pharmaceuticals, they will hold on to your approval for a month or two just for the shareholder side. Do we really need to do that? Does that really help anyone? It may balance look like, and knowing now a little bit more about how money works, I understand how it temporarily makes your spreadsheet look better, how it makes your stock price look better. But when you look, and we're supposed to be looking 5 years ahead for these things, we're not supposed to be looking at that month or that week. So for the patient, if we look ahead the 5 years, if they look ahead at their accounting for 5 years, it is better to have a convergent interest and start doing that now. Actually expedite the approval for the right patients that are fitting the right criteria. And then the physician should have the attitude that I want to have my care patient-centered. I had the unfortunate/fortunate experience to be a patient myself in medical school for something quite serious. And I saw the cracks in the system. I saw the highlights of the system. But one thing I was like, I will not give up on anyone. That was something I said to myself. When someone has a problem, I will run myself ragged until their problem is solved. And have I done a perfect job of that? No. Have I tried to do a great job of it? I have tried my best, and I have kept that. I think if we all keep that, every part of the system can work better. So, and even down to the patient level, and this could say, my patients just show up, they're like, well, I had labs 7 months ago, I think, or 2 months ago. I don't know who I saw, what I did. If they came slightly prepared, it would make their experience better. If they kept their own care at the front and valued it, they would do better. And then the physician would then follow, and then they would keep their care instead of scrambling. So at every level, if we had just more convergence, I think the healthcare system would operate more efficiently, and we would get much better outcomes.
Well, I will tell you, the people of Columbus, Ohio, who need rheumatologic care are very fortunate to have you. You are a huge cheerleader. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Meredith. Really nice. Thank you.
To everyone listening, the full video of this episode is now available on YouTube. Just search Working Healthcare and hit subscribe so you don't miss future interviews, short clips, and behind-the-scenes moments. And you actually get to see Dr. Matthew Mundwiler dressed up in a suit. He came prepared. And if you've got a question, an episode idea, or someone you think we should feature, drop us a line at meredithhirsch.com.
And if this conversation hit home for you or made you think a little differently, don't keep it to yourself. Share the episode, tag a friend, or post it on social media. You can follow us at Working Healthcare on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. That's where we keep the conversation going between episodes. The more voices we bring into this space, the more momentum we build. Because change doesn't start with a policy, it starts with a conversation, a real one like this.
New episodes drop every Tuesday, and trust us, you won't want to miss what's coming next. I'm Meredith Hirsch.
And I'm Mike Chavez.
Tune in weekly as we explore the inner workings of healthcare.
You ready? You got me running, got me running.